And I was wondering about this passage, but the context is people need to know and hear the gospel so that they know they are forgiven, or else they don't know it.
Yeah,
Otherwise, they just keep on doing things that they don't realize is wrong.
Welcome, fellow traveler, to the Good Book Club. We ask good questions to keep the conversation going, and today we're doing John 20.
John number 20. Can you believe we're almost done?
One more chapter and we're done.
Just one more and we're done. Can you believe it? It's incredible. So, chapter 20 is a very important one because it talks about the resurrection.
The resurrection. Sorry, not the resurrection, the resurrection.
The resurrection of Jesus. The empty tomb, in other words. And who was at the tomb?
Who was at the tomb? Maria.
Maria. Which Mary?
You tell me.
Mary Magdalene.
Magdalene?
Yes, she was from Magdala, one of Jesus's followers. And she went there, saw that the tomb had already been opened. She went back to Peter and the other disciples, told them what she had seen. And then a disciple whom Jesus loved and Peter ran. And the writer makes it very clear that John, who is the writer of John, ran and got there first. He said it twice. Just to clarify that he outran Peter.
Twice I was first.
Twice I was first. But funny enough, when John got there, he didn't go in immediately. He ran, stopped, and looked into the tomb. And when Peter got there, he went straight inside. Why do you think Peter just went inside?
It's because he did not care of what others think.
Okay.
Because apparently in those times, you were not allowed to go into someone's grave if there was a dead body.
It was this thing about in Leviticus that if you touched a dead body, you would be ceremonially unclean.
Okay.
So going near one is putting you at risk at that.
But what about the people that carried dead bodies in?
So yes, they would then be unclean. Then they would have to go through a process of purifying themselves again.
Oh wow! So you could just do that again.
Probably, but the best scenario is to avoid it as much as possible.
But
because
if no one knows.
What do you mean if no one knows?
If you're the only person.
God would know.
Yeah, he would know, but he rose from the dead, so it's.
But Peter wanted to confirm, did he really rise from the dead?
Well, there was no body.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing is, and the cloths were actually neatly packed up. Do you know what that meant?
Like tidying up your bed.
Exactly. So even Jesus rose up early and made his bed.
Wow. And did some gardening.
Not really.
We don't know, but yeah,
really.
that part's coming shortly.
Okay.
So.
But why was it folded?
It was folded because it means in I don't recall which culture.
Jewish.
The Jewish culture.
These guys were Jews.
Jews, of course. Wow. We've been talking about Jews the whole time. Anyway. So, it means I will come back.
Yes.
I will return.
It's very cool because when somebody was at a table, for example, they would fold their napkin and then go away, but that napkin was a physical representation of I will be back. And it's so cool because it was Jesus's way of saying he'll be back. And that happened just after this in the same chapter, which is with Mary. And they, by the way, I need to say this, when the other disciple, John, had finally gone inside, he saw and believed, even though they did not understand the scriptures right away. But it's cool that he himself was in the empty tomb and he believed what he saw. And then they went back to where they were staying. And sometime later, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and she was crying. And who did she find inside?
No one?
No.
Oh,
There were.
Someone inside the tomb.
Yeah, two of them.
Two of them was the two disciples.
No.
Okay, who was it?
Two angels.
Oh yeah, the angels. Oh, the classic from what they tell in kids' Bible school.
Yes.
That classic story.
The two angels were there, and they asked her, "Why are you crying?" And then she said, They have taken away my Lord, verse 13. I don't know where they have put him. And at this she turned and saw Jesus, but she did not recognize him. Why did she not recognize him?
She thought he was a gardener. The theory that we have is that because Jesus was glorified, therefore he. There are a few different reasons, but the glorification made him unrecognizable because we're not used to seeing a glorified body after being deceased, and also during his tribulation, right? No, during the time when he was put on the cross and all that, he was unrecognizable, beaten. So he physically also healed. So maybe just also healed to whatever he needed to look like after being beaten so badly.
It's actually a prophecy that you mentioned, that he would be beaten and be unrecognizable as a man. That just says how brutal it really was. And then here, that is our theory. He was the firstborn of the glorified bodies, which we will also get when he comes back. We will also be raised up and have our bodies glorified. Jesus is the first one to have the glorified body. And in Luke 24, there was another story where he was walking quite a distance with two other followers. He was talking with them the whole time. They didn't recognize him until he broke the bread. Then they recognized him.
Interesting. So no one else broke bread during that time, if you think about it.
No, just when he broke it, they realized, oh, it's Jesus, and then he disappeared.
Teleportation.
In thin air, like literally like that.
Teleportation is a thing.
And it's happening in this chapter as well. We're going to get to that right away, or almost. He says, she didn't recognize him, and he simply said her name, Mary. And then she replied, Rabboni, meaning teacher, and she recognized him. Isn't it beautiful that he just calls her on her name, and she knew it was him?
Because Jesus knows everyone's names.
And I think when God calls your name, you would just know it's his voice.
You will know it's his. It's interesting they did not recognize him, but that they by chance feel a presence of God, which led to them realizing or recognizing it's him.
Yeah. And what's interesting here, that's the other thing I wanted to say, is she thought he was the gardener, and I always thought this was...
Gardener, mentioned earlier.
I always thought it was interesting that she thought he was the gardener, because the story of the Bible starts in a garden.
It starts in a garden, yes, that's really cool. And also the metaphors and similes he uses, he's the vine and everything. So he's a gardener by nature.
Exactly.
Well, nature is made by God, so he's gardener by God. But he is God, so he's God.
It was always interesting to me that she thought he was the gardener. But nonetheless, he told her, don't hold on to me because I haven't ascended back to my Father yet.
What does that mean?
I can't remember at this moment just yet. I think it was something to do with, as a priest, they had to... I can't remember all the rituals, to be honest.
Okay, I can recall some of it.
Okay.
In Afrikaans we call it a sondebok, a sinbak,
Sin lamb?
sin lamb probably.
Yeah.
But there are two lambs. So we have earlier the previous chapters when Pilate was there and we had Son of God or Son of the Father and Son of Man.
Son of a father.
Son of a father
Barabbas.
was released, Barabbas. He was released, and then son of the father was put on the cross to die. And this is where the correlation, also the parallel takes place, because the high priest actually, on a Sabbath day, they would take two lambs. So one would in Afrikaans be called a sonnebok, and then the other one is just a lamb, which is the pure lamb. And the people will cheer on which one should be taken away to take all the sin. So what the high priest would do is he would actually go around the sonnebok, and then they would shout. Don't recall exactly what they shout.
Azazel.
Azazel, and that is basically saying that all the sins are being transferred to the lamb. So it's the lamb of sin, or the lamb taking on all the sin. And they weren't allowed to chase it out, otherwise it was work. So they just had to lead it out gently to go into the wild and maybe die. I don't know what happened. But then you have the pure lamb, but that lamb was saved because it was not broken or anything. Oh, important detail. Both lambs looked exactly the same. And Jesus also looked like man. And, well, he is the Son of Man. We're made in his image. So therefore also look exactly the same. And Jesus died on the cross for our sins. So he was a sonnebok. And he took the sin on him. What was the question again?
Why did he say, "Don't hold on to me"?
That's actually from...
My mom did tell us yesterday.
Yes.
I can't remember all the detail because it was very interesting.
It was very interesting. So it's basically the high priest goes into the high place, and then with the lambs, kill the lamb in there.
Oh, right.
Yes, he kills the lamb.
Spray the blood 7 times.
Yes, spray the blood 7 times, and then also spray the blood on his, I think on his clothes.
On his clothes, and he wasn't allowed to be touched yet until the thing was finished.
Yes,
I think it had something to do with that.
Yeah. So if it's with purification or anything, he wasn't allowed to be touched until he came out and said, "It is done. It is done." Yeah. It's very interesting. We actually should make a video of where we can.
Definitely.
We should script this so we can actually go.
Yeah.
With no ums and ahs.
Nice. And we can also go through it with the questions and answers episode.
Yes.
Where we go into detail about all the questions you guys put in the comments and all the interesting things we want to zoom in on. So we can definitely go through it in that episode. But thank you. You remembered some of the stuff that I couldn't recall.
Oh, that's great.
But from here, she went on and told the other disciples that she saw the Lord. And the evening of the first day, so it was the Sunday evening, Jesus suddenly appeared in the midst of the room, even though the doors were locked. Teleportation. And then he said, "Peace to you."
Like a thief.
Like a thief, yeah, stealthy. And
say thief again?
Thief.
Okay.
I sometimes say it wrong. But it's a little ironic that he just shows up and says, "Peace to you." Do you think they got it right?
I think so.
Is seeing him the first time after he got brutally murdered.
And just being there is as of seeing a ghost. Because who are you? Because he was unrecognizable at first, and even if they did recognize him, it's still, you need to get over the human part of, you saw this person die and now you're very much alive here in front of you, talking to you. Are you hallucinating? No. So that's even that. Yeah.
In the other gospel, they did think he was a ghost, and he asked for something to eat, just to show them he is a physical body that can eat, because a ghost can't eat anything.
Who came up with ghosts?
I'm actually not sure, but I know who we should call.
Who?
Ghostbusters. You had to see that one coming. Who are you gonna call? Ghostbusters! Anyway, from here he says, "Peace be with you." Shalom was a typical Hebrew greeting, which means peace. Shalom, thank you. Then he says, "As the Father sent me, I send you." And he breathed on them, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone their sins, they're forgiven. But if you don't forgive them, they are not forgiven." Now, this is actually quite a few things happening.
Yeah, it's a very
What is going on with this passage?
Okay, so it says, if you forgive them, they are forgiven. If you don't forgive them, then they will... what?
then they're not forgiven.
then not forgiven. But it says you're prohibiting them from something.
It was in the context of being sent, like an apostle, because he mentions that his father sent him, and so he is sending his disciples as well. Apostle means somebody that is sent to go and tell people about the good news. And I was wondering about this passage, but the context is people need to know and hear the gospel so that they know they are forgiven, or else they don't know it.
Yeah,
Otherwise, they just keep on doing things that they don't realize is wrong.
Yeah, well, believers also do things wrong because it's in our nature, but we're Christians they aren't sinners. If you go through the process of becoming a Christian, you are no longer a sinner, but you do still sin because we're used to that, because it is a habit that's very hard to break. And if you don't tell the good news, then they're always going to think they're doomed, going to hell, if they stuff like that. And if they do know the good news, then it's much easier for them to actually work towards not to sin. Because if you don't know, then it's like, I did sin, let me do this rituals, things that I have to do. But yeah, how can you go to heaven if you don't know there's a heaven?
Good point.
One comparison I actually used is like sharing the good news for this passage is, if everyone believed that strawberries were poisonous, they won't eat the strawberry. But then the good news came that strawberries isn't poisonous. So then you share the good news so that people can eat the strawberries.
Yeah. And what's cool is I like to look at cross-references. He mentions the thing about forgiveness. And then if you think about the Heavenly Father prayer in Matthew 6, then he says, if you forgive others, then your Father will forgive you. But if you don't forgive them, your Father won't forgive you. But here he mentions forgiveness again, but he doesn't mention that part. Everything changed because of the cross.
Yeah.
So how I understand this is that you're forgiven by the Father when you obviously accept his sacrifice, that you believe that he died for you. And then it's not dependent on your capacity that the Father forgives you. It's because of Jesus and the blood that his blood that he paid the price for. And this, how I understood it, was about, I call it horizontal relationships with your fellow people, with people
We're
around
on the
your
same
family,
level.
your friends, the strangers, the people around you. If I don't forgive you, then the consequences are I didn't forgive you. Or the positive part is I do forgive you.
Yeah.
And Jesus is kind of repeating himself, but I think it's also emphasizing how important it is that if you forgive someone, it's good, you forgave them.
Yeah.
But if you don't, then the consequences is you didn't forgive them. And he might not say it here, but maybe it's implied that then you will have bitterness if you don't forgive.
If you don't forgive, that people like to make the comparison of it's drinking poison and hoping that the other person dies if you don't forgive.
Yeah, I've heard about that comparison as well.
It is very much like that, because you're being poisoned or killing yourself from the inside.
My dad says that holding a grudge is a big waste of time.
It is. Why would you waste that energy?
Exactly. It's draining you. And the thing is, funny enough, I've held grudges in the past for like a long time. Then I think back, why did I do that? It was such a waste of time. It was so draining.
The other person they don't care.
They don't even know what happened, and then you hold on to it so much.
This guy ate my bagel. I'm gonna hold a grudge against him.
Bagel.
Meantime, that guy doesn't even know that he accidentally took a bagel.
Yeah. And it's funny because that's just like a normal example, but even for big things, some people moved on from situations and then you can still hold on to it. Like you're drinking the poison, hoping somebody else will get hurt, and it doesn't really work. I think another comparison was that not forgiving is like you locking yourself in a prison. Nobody put you there except you yourself. You went in a prison, locked it, and threw the key. And that's
Well, you
kind
can.
of
You
what
well
forgiveness
when you
does.
stop holding the grudge, then you unlock. So you don't throw away the
Exactly.
key. Okay, we're trailing off here now.
But anyway, from here on out, oh, by the way, Thomas wasn't present with this appearance when Jesus showed up. And sometime later, they told Thomas, hey, we've seen the Lord. And he said that he wants to see it with his own hands. He wants to put his fingers where the nails were. He says, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. And a week later, when they were in the room again and Thomas was there, the doors were again locked. Jesus showed up and said, peace be with you, and said to Thomas, put your finger here, see my hands, reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. And he says, my Lord and my God, which is such a significant moment because this whole time John is actually saying that Jesus is God with the I am statements, that I am is one of God's names. And for somebody to just directly say it, my Lord and my God, is just such a great, you can say, climax to the book, that it's been building up to that whole revelation that Jesus is God. And here's the climax that he's saying, my Lord and my God. And it's interesting because a lot of people say, oh, it's doubting Thomas. And personally, I get bothered when people say that, because then I'm thinking he was asking for evidence what
everyone in this world
yeah.
actually do.
And there's nothing wrong with asking evidence. That's why we made this, to say there's nothing wrong with asking questions about the Bible.
I think I believe that you should go through the doubting phase. You can ask the questions to build a solid foundation, to delve onto the answers, because in the end, why should you believe but not ask? Well, there's no logic in that. And logic is derived from logos, which means godly, meaning think godly.
And it's a wonderful place to ask questions and to not just blindly believe something. It's good to ask questions. So what Thomas did was brilliant, and he also asked for evidence to see, was the sacrifice effective? Was it successful? And when Jesus showed up and said, look at the nail marks, look at the evidence, he was confirming the sacrifice. And then Jesus says, because you have seen me, you have believed, but blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe. That's you and me and everyone else who never saw Jesus physically, but we still believed. We're blessed because of just believing it.
That's amazing. It's very simple.
And it's incredible, this passage. Somebody also said that this also shows that God meets you exactly where you are. So for Mary, he met her at the tomb crying. For Thomas, he met him when he was asking questions. Later in chapter 21, we will see how he meets Peter. He also met the others where they were locked inside the room because they were scared. They locked the rooms most likely because they thought the Pharisees might come and persecute them or kill them, since they killed their leader. If they could kill their leader, they could probably kill his followers. That's likely the reason why I believe, why they locked the doors. But Jesus met them in a locked room where they were afraid. He met Mary crying. He met Thomas doubting.
And today, in today's time, God, he meets you where you are.
Definitely. He always meets you where you are.
Yesterday was definitely one of those days.
Yeah, exactly. We were actually sitting on this couch discussing these two chapters yesterday.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And the last part of this chapter is where he says that there are many other signs that Jesus performed that are not written in this book, but those that are written is so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that you may have life in his name. So John admits that there's so much more that he did not write, but that which he did write is very important.
Handpicked.
Exactly.
Wow. So that's the last verse.
Yeah, of chapter 20.
All right. See you in the next episode. See you in chapter 21, the very last episode of John. The book of John is going to be done after that episode.
It?
So see you guys in that episode. Comment, like, share, subscribe. If you have any questions or just excited, put it in the comment section. Cheerio.
See you then.